through the years of coaching and through many personal ups and downs, I've realized that what is called coaching out there right now in the world is wonderful, but it's not enough. We tell people, we talk about insight, we talk about goals, we talk about mindset, and sometimes it works. And to me, sometimes it works is not something I'm going to dedicate my life to. It's just not enough. I don't need the perfect client for the work to work. I want the work that's going to help anyone at any point. And that brought me straight into the nervous system work, to the work on our state and how to change our state and how to listen to the body more deeply. And I just want to say the last thing, because I learned this the hard way. Like many people that have been through the journey of burnout, as long as we push through, we are not listening to the body, right?
Welcome to the Conscious Leadership Revolution podcast, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome to the Conscious Leadership Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Susan Hobson, and I am here myself with a special guest today. Tracy's still over in beautiful Portugal on her world tour as she has ascended into her new leadership shoes. And I am so excited to introduce you to my friend, Marta Czajkowska, who is the founder of Masters of Badassery. I just wanted to start with the title of her business because, it gives you a little flavor for what we got coming in our flow for you all today. Marta is a leadership strategist and nervous system capacity expert, working with founders and executives navigating accelerating environments. She developed the capacity gap framework, which addresses the distance between what high performance environments demand and what the human nervous system can actually sustain. Marta brings a precision performance lens to the question most leadership development ignores. What does it take to stay conscious, clear, and coherent, even when everything is moving faster than your biology was built for? Oh, yeah, you can see the alignment right off the draw. I know we're going to have a ripe co-creation for you all to enjoy today. Marta, it's so freaking awesome to have you in studio and on this mic, girl. Welcome.
I am so happy to be part of the revolution, Susan.
The revolution has begun, hasn't it? Right? This is why I feel like we called each other in, because we are so aligned on this mission to change the way the game is being played in leadership development and training. You know, what we've been talking about on this show, Marta, is how we really believe that these have become the table stakes for leaders' development in 2026 and beyond. And yeah, your deep focus and mastery of all things nervous system regulation is exactly where I want to start. I want you to share with our audience the backstory in terms of maybe a little bit of that heroine's journey and what inspired you to go into this area of mastery in the leadership development space.
Well, I have to start all the way back.
Yes,
as we
please.
do, right?
Right.
Because we get deeply formed so early. So for me, I grew up in communist Poland, and my father left really early when I was 2 years old. So from there, I developed this way of being in the world where I just tried to fix everything and be the parent, right? So fast forward to my teen years, my country fell apart. The Iron Curtain disappeared, right? The democracy was introduced, and my parents got a divorce. And I was so lucky in that moment because I was at 15. It caught me in the right time. I was like, oh, that was made up. That was made up. That means I don't have to do anything that I thought I need to do. I was like, this is all BS, guys. I'm out of here. Um, so I got obsessed with rock climbing, and as any good teenager could do, it was a classic teenager thing to do. I saw a rock climbing movie that was filmed in Yosemite, and I said, "I'm going there." And I did. So at 18, I was like, "Guys, you suck. I am going where my life is." And I straight up moved to Yosemite Valley to become a rock climber or continue being the rock climber that, I was training to be. And obviously a huge move for a young person, opening of the world. I ended up taking that lifestyle far, traveling all over the world, climbing. Um, it was an incredible time in my life, full of difficulties. I was a immigrant woman alone. That already paints quite a picture, right? But so I dealt with all of these adversities, and I basically lived this life of adventure for decades. Um, until one day in my 30s, I was in Tasmania climbing this thing called the totem pole. It's like the most famous climbing thing in Australia. It's this like tower sticking out of the ocean that's like three feet by 3 feet. And it's just incredible. So I'm out there in Tasmania. This is ridiculous. Look, climbing the totem pole. And I climbed the totem pole and I was like, that's okay. I'm kind of bored.
My God. No
And
way.
I was like, okay, clearly I've taken this as far as this goes for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I might have overstayed my welcome. And so I had my first awakening into, oh, I have been training for this thing, but this thing is no longer what I want to be doing. So what is it? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I already knew, but I was so scared. Some people might relate to this. Like I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but I was terrified, and I wasn't letting this at all, um, you know, uh, to be a reality. But I wanted to help people in the depths of their lives. That's what I knew. I want to be with people in the deepest things in their lives, and that brought me to coaching. So after 20 plus years sitting on the walls, I was like, okay, coaching now. I stepped into it, and I started working with people, and it was the most amazing thing where I could see how all of this translates and how much I know from that world of nature, and we call it the vertical world, right? Um, and through the years of coaching and through many personal ups and downs, I've realized that what is called coaching out there right now in the world is wonderful, but it's not enough. We tell people, we talk about insight, we talk about goals, we talk about mindset, and sometimes it works. And to me, sometimes it works is not something I'm going to dedicate my life to. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
enough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need the perfect client to for the work to work. I want the work that's gonna help anyone at any point. And that brought me straight into the nervous system work, to the work on our state, and how to change our state, and how to listen to the body um, more deeply. And I just want to say the last thing because I learned this the hard way. Like many people that have been through the journey of burnout, um, as long as we push through, um, we are not listening to the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the moment we crash, this is the moment where the body can start. When we go, oh, were you saying something for the last 30 years?
Ah, whoops. Yeah, and I think that's a byproduct, right? Of especially highlighted in your story of that high achiever mindset, where we're chasing outcomes for the purposes of that external validation, that dopamine addiction, right? Is like the mentality that we're all conditioned into when we're at that first part of the journey, doing it in that maladaptive way, is no pain, no gain, right? And so we're actually taught the wrong message in terms of the secret to success is to suppress, repress, and deny your emotional experience, which
Right.
is why when I found neurolinguistic programming, I felt so called to that type of modality in terms of how to drive behavior modification because yeah, that really is the secret that unlocks peak performance in a highly sustainable way. It's what takes us from striving to thriving, right? Is really
Mm,
understanding that you have to go to that step of depth in terms of the nervous system. It can't just be intellectual level coaching where you're talking. Like they need actual practices, and where you and I align, it's in the conscious leadership
mm,
practices, right? So the first place I want to really speak to is I would love for you to share with us what your perspective is in terms of what that concept means to you. Conscious leadership. What does that mean to you?
mhm,
And then I'd love to pull in some of your experience with your 30-year career mastering this hardcore sport of mountain climbing and
mm,
how that sort of inspired this appreciation for the role that the nervous system plays in our conscious leadership.
mhm, mhm.
So, what does that
Yeah,
mean to you, conscious leadership, the concept?
so interesting. The everything that we're aware of, we can play with. I like to say play with because why not, right? So for most people, most of the time, there's big areas of being unaware. We're all learning and growing, and so conscious leadership to me is when you're able to sit with yourself, and as things that are unaware come to your awareness, to welcome them instead of pushing them away,
Invite
right?
them.
So
Hmm.
right, to invite them. I was working with a founder just today, where this is a very tangible example. She became aware of a part of her. You're an IFS practitioner, right?
Hmm.
So we're
Hmm.
working on her parts. And she's like, oh, I have this part. I called her case builder. She builds a case how to leave a difficult situation, right? She just became aware of this part. And she's like, how do you not act from this part? I destroy everything in my life from this part. She's like, how do I know that I'm in this part or not? And so we coached around it. And what
Hmm.
she found out is that if she's trying to send that part away, no, don't come, case builder, don't come, don't mess with my relationship. Case builder is going to be right in there,
Hmm. Hmm.
wrecking it all, right?
Hmm.
And she's like, oh, I invite her. To me,
Yeah.
that's conscious leadership, right? On a
Hmm.
very base level of our being.
Yeah, inviting that part in for a cup of coffee, right? With all the curiosity that you can muster, because that's where the data and intel lives, is in the perspective of that part. And no, you can't power struggle it away, right?
Mm.
It's like it's at the end of the day, when you actually invite it in with curiosity, you can figure out what it needs. And then you really
Yeah,
can step to the helm as the leader, as the authority, and giving that part what it needs so that it doesn't need to hijack the wheel in your nervous system, you
right.
know?
And back to the leadership, taking leadership over the parts and going,
Hmm.
yes, you're invited. What is it that you're trying to do, case builder?
Hmm.
Oh, nobody else is speaking up for us. Oh,
Hmm.
that makes sense. Well, thank
Hmm.
you for having been speaking for us for the last 4 years,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the internal environment inevitably changes. It has to.
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, well, of course, it's the external environment in terms of how we orient in it is predicted by our internal environment and how we're
Mm,
orienting that in our self-leadership. And if we're
mm,
not consciously at the helm in that orientation, then of course that part that is scared, that is insecure, is going to hijack the wheel to make sure someone's speaking for you because there's
mm,
a need there. And
mm,
needs aren't negotiable. They're requisite
mm.
aspects of what our nervous system requires for safety, right?
Right,
So I
that's
love
exactly it.
our alignment in terms of, the nervous system being the key that unlocks all of that. In that self regulation, that yes, we can do in regards to parts work, that is a form of intervention that actually gets to that depth in the nervous system. How about in terms of what you experienced up on those mountains, right? Because I feel like what you and I also have in common is like we have a real deep appreciation for what actually shows up on the play when you're in the highest stakes, most high pressure conditions, right?
Mm,
Like that is a
mm,
very visceral thing in terms of what you're up against in your capacity if you don't know how to regulate your way through it, especially the higher you climb. Sounds like you
right.
climbed to some pretty big heights there in terms of your mountaineering career. But yeah, what
Mm,
role has that played in terms of informing your life's work?
I mean, so much. It's so interesting to even separate it, right?
Mm-hmm.
from from me, but um, something that I saw when I started working with leaders in the mountains, right? So I do these different length sort of commitments with leaders where I take them out, and some people are training to climb a big mountain in a year, and some people are doing a weekend thing, whatever. Um, what I what what I realized about myself, I saw as they were going through this, right? So as a mirror of myself, and one incredible thing is that mm, when you're in these environments in nature, the same with
Hockey.
sports,
Mm-hmm.
obviously,
Mm-hmm.
um, there it's really hard to lie to yourself. Things are very clear, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you're up on a mountain and you're like, I don't think I can go any further, um, that might feel like truth in your office when you can't do another thing any further. But on the mountain, you can say, can you take one more step? Right. And then one more step changes the person's completely view of themselves, right? Can you make two more steps? And I need to say this disclaimer because it's not about more steps better, not at all.
No, that's not the
Right?
point. Mm-mm.
That's not the point, and it can be taken as such. It's not the summit, right? That
Mm-hmm.
matters in here. It's that you can come back down to base camp and tell the story of how you have made that one more step, or how the thing came and it you barely made it out alive, or how
Mm-hmm.
you met someone there that needed help and you climbed it together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in these simpler environments, we get a cleaner image of how we are. And when we connect that with coaching, especially, or self-inquiry, coaching is beautiful for that. We we can't ignore that anymore in our lives. We start
Mm-hmm.
seeing it in our marriage, we start seeing it in our relationship with our boss. And once you start seeing it, that's it. Like you can't go back, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of making the unconscious conscious, right? Is that
Yeah.
it opens up new choice. And
Mm,
that's where I think it like starts to take on a life, you know? When you take one more step, you open up new choice. You're expanding your perceptual powers and your perspective in terms of your capacity, right?
yeah.
Which in essence actually expands your capacity because
Absolutely.
it's belief deep, right? When there's actual proof and evidence that you could and you take action or the behavior starts to reinforce that portal of possibility that opens up through our consciousness.
Right. Which is I mean, it's people do it all the time in their normal life, in their business life, um, but it's super simple and non-threatening when we do it in these environments. It's crazy that I'm saying that it's non-threatening because you're literally
On a mountain?
in the most dangerous environments out there, but it's true. It's somehow it's you and what's happening and who you choose to be in that moment. And it's clear and it's clean, you know.
Yeah, and it's like you said, by the time you get down to the summit, you've integrated a whole new aspect of your being, right? Which is just so
Yeah.
powerful. And I think this is the other point of alignment that you and I share. When I talk about how we develop leaders, I talk about getting them in the locker room. And it's all about, getting those reps in terms of that brain training, that consciousness training, because that is where that experiential integration lives, right? And this is something that you also do with your leaders. So would you mind
Mm.
sharing just some of how you work on that consciousness training with them experientially for the purposes of integration?
Yeah. I want to say I love the locker room. I just love it. Everything about it.
Thank
Because
you.
what you just described, but also the fact that all the important conversations, all the soul bearing happens
Mm-hmm.
in the
Literally.
life, right?
Yeah.
It
Mm-hmm.
happens in there. And so it's just so rich on so many levels. It makes me
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm in there in the community, in my body, sweating, you know.
That was the point of that metaphor. NLP, we
Mm,
use a lot of metaphors to plug us into the known spaces and places of our conditioning for the purposes of understanding the power that some of these concepts hold, right? And I don't think I have ever experienced an environment that was more symbolic of what it
mm,
is that these leadership teams are doing behind closed doors, Like the
mhm.
pressure is real, the stakes are
Yeah.
super high, especially right now as we're all starting to go through the disruption that we've been predicting is coming down this pipeline with AI, right?
Mm,
And so there's never
yeah.
been a more important time to get into the locker room for the purposes of that integration, that behavior modification, leadership being a set of behaviors after all. Like
Mm,
this is how the game is changing. We're not
mm,
going to be able to stay in positions of leadership if we're not learning how to consciously step to this helm, I predict.
yeah. And I think it's the timing is so crazy right now because the AI is coming and dysregulating everybody. This is something
Hmm.
I talk about because I want to
That's
be
real.
there for the leaders who start feeling like when we first got Claude, my husband wouldn't shower until he was out of tokens. Like this is real. This
It's
is
real. It's
this is
absolutely
like this
real. It's what I'm
happening
seeing in the
everywhere,
trenches too. I know.
right?
It's
Um,
triggering our amygdalas is
oh
the
my God, yeah.
reality. Yeah, that
I
you and I are
I
seeing.
I haven't heard so many people saying I'm overwhelmed in every sentence, right?
Hmm.
This is the data is there and it's coming for a lot of leaders, and the responsibility is to learn how to work with AI and keep your nervous system regulated so that you can teach people that are working with you. You can pass it on. You can model to the room what it's like to be regulated. But another thing that I just thought of when you said that was that there's also another kind of crisis happening is that we've had coaching around for quite a while, and teams have been through leadership trainings and improvement here, many habit, whatever. People are disillusioned with it. It's not working. So it's like, I don't
Hmm.
want another training that's just going to do
Hmm.
absolutely nothing except of put me behind on
Hmm.
47,000 emails.
That resistance is real because 75% of the industry is still rated ineffective in terms of affecting behavior modification in a sustainable way. Only 25% of the industry is rated as effective right now. And so this is why I believe, again, that conscious leadership is going to become the table stakes, has become the table stakes, right? Because the
Mhm.
need to develop our leaders surely never goes away. And it's up
Right.
to us, right? Like one of the first things I do, I had a leadership locker room with the team this morning. And the very first thing I do when they come into the locker room is I do a breath work exercise, because I'm just really trying to make the case experientially for the difference it makes. Because they'll all come flying into the locker room like, ooh, still typing on like one of their three keyboards, and you can see, I can feel it as an empath and intuitive, the upregulation is real. But
Mhm.
how powerful is it to take them inside, to downregulate their nervous system in a way that you cannot deny, right? When they come back into that collective space
Yeah.
in a much more creative capacity, which is what these collective spaces are requiring for the purposes of our innovation and adaptation right now, right? We need to
Mhm.
be co-creative. Yes, even with AI, it requires
Right.
that we're at the helm in our nervous system for the purposes of that co-creative capacity.
Right. So for me, I see two pieces to it that are super important, and they're not going to be a surprise, and you already know this, but one is that coming in and teaching the body um, how to go into rest and digest, into different brain waves and into relaxation. Super important skill. The other skill is actually stressing the things that need to be stressed, right?
Mm-hmm,
Because if we're not lifting,
mm-hmm,
we're not growing.
mm-hmm,
And um, a lot of leadership trainings will give you ideas, oh, think about this, to the, I don't know, journal on this or whatever.
mm-hmm,
But unless we put people in this situation that's actually uncomfortable for them right at this,
mm-hmm,
the tip, and
mm-hmm,
train that, um,
mm-hmm,
it it's the nervous system is not going to expand, right? So this is
mm-hmm,
the, can you take an extra step? Can you take one step? Can you take five? Can you see that this was a false summit? There's a whole another summit out there that will climb after you rest, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I want you to walk us through just some of that consciousness training that you do with your leaders because, yeah, I think that that is like one of the most powerful ways, not only to make the case for the efficacy of conscious leadership training, right? But also to empower these leaders to want to start running with these, tools and strategies and practices in their own lane. So how exactly do you do that? You said something about getting them into their red flag emotions, right? Like actually
Mhm.
triggering them. And then how is it that you lead them through that in your own lane as a practice?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating work. It's work that is really confronting, because we have dissociation exists in our nervous system for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we see a lot of people, when confronted, dissociate in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what
Mm-hmm.
I first do is create a space where I address that. Hey, dissociation, or even you might get angry. All these things are normal here, and sketch out what is. We have safe words.
I love it.
Just so that people know that they're not stuck in this deep training. And then we talk
Mm-hmm.
about what are the situations in which you lose it in
Mm-hmm.
your leadership. When do you lose it? what are what's the cost of you losing it? Give
Mm-hmm.
me, like, tell me what happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And inevitably, everybody has a lot of those. I just did one last night where I lost it, right?
Yeah.
As a nervous system expert.
Regulator. Yeah.
I I know we're all losing it, right? That's not a
Yes.
problem,
Yeah.
right?
No, I think that's really important that we're speaking to how this is something that you and I appreciate so deeply because it's something you and I are so grateful we have the ability to practice in our own lanes because we're all
Right,
humans. We're all
right,
feeling it. It's very intense right now in the ethers. None of us can
right,
escape that. Even the experts are really
yeah,
doubling down on these practices right now.
right, right. Yeah, then you see the triggering moment. We actually practice that exact moment with different
Mhm.
scenarios,
Mhm.
and and the person comes up with different responses, right? So after the triggering, the purposeful
Mhm.
triggering, the lifting session, we go
Mhm.
back into repair and relaxation to give the mental muscles, the nervous system, time to recover, because recovery is where
Mhm.
we grow, right?
Mhm.
So, and I really advise people listening right now, especially if you're working with AI, you're going to need a lot more rest,
Mhm.
decompression time, like on Susan's beautiful painting behind her. You're going to need to go to that place
Ah.
20 times a day in your
Mhm.
mind
Mhm.
to notice your breathing, notice what's happening in your body, because that's how you recover, so that you
Mhm.
can up that
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
productivity or whatever it is that you want to create out there, which
Mhm.
is a lot of beautiful creative things, right? So we
Mhm.
want you to do them,
This is
right?
one of the things I love speaking about the most, because I think it's the play and the playbook of high performance that high achievers never got, right? Because they're super
Mm,
compensating in their nervous system as a job, as a way of being in their leadership. Yeah, they don't actually have an appreciation for active disengagement. And this
mm,
is like when you study what we're talking about in terms of the importance of having capacity so that you can show up in your flow, that peak state of flow, it requires what's called periodization. And this is something that my sport actually taught me. Like when I was forced into ice baths and onto bikes and like doing all of these, recovery practices that were actually mandated for me at the highest levels, is because they actually knew it's like if I really want to predictably show up in my peak, then I have to be very disciplined in terms of how I recover
mm.
after my peak levels of active engagement.
Right,
But it's the
right.
one that high achievers struggle with the most. I can hear them
Mm.
out there listening to this and thinking, oh, sure, I'm going to get more rest right now as things accelerate in the disruption, right? It's so counter to a sympathetic overdrive that's telling us it's not safe to slow down. Like slowing down is akin to weakness and falling behind and like all those fixed mindset beliefs, right? That we have to.
And you all need to get a bedtime too.
I know it sounds really basic and obvious, but it's not basic and obvious when you're stuck in a sympathetic overdrive, right? It's like your brain is meant to keep you safe and alive. It takes that job very seriously. And if we're in a
Yeah.
sympathetic overdrive, that's not safe, not safe, not safe. Constantly the message that's registering in your from your nervous system to your brain. And so, yeah, this is where I think mindset meets all of this, nervous system regulation practice that we're talking about, right? Because if you don't actually understand how to get up in the box, and challenge that perspective about how much time you actually have, yeah, just play that game tape forward. You're going to see you definitely need to make time to practice the down gear, right? Or else you're not going to
Yeah.
survive the disruption. You're not going to be able to
Right.
play through it, and you're not going to be able to capitalize on all these opportunities for growth that those who are down regulating and recovering are going to have the easiest time seeing because
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a competitive advantage for leaders to be practicing that recovery two times,
Oh,
you know?
absolutely. I think it's the one, because like all the tools, AI is going to solve a lot of things we won't have to deal with, you know?
Hmm.
So a lot of what we used to do, we won't have to do. So what's left? Your thinking capacity and how regulated you are when you are showing up to do your job. So I love it in some way, because it's bringing us back to what's real.
Hmm.
And I really hope, this is maybe a bit of a tangent, but I look at environment, and, I'm a big mountain person, nature person. And I'm like, oh, we are dysregulated also our environment with the productivity and the endless, expansion piece that is based on lack, based on that
Mhm.
survival mechanism that you just described. We're dysregulating the world. So my hope is that as we are rising to higher challenging just with this crazy thing that's happening in the world right now, we'll actually get to the bottom of what a regulated a nervous system feels like. We'll know this in our bodies, and we'll create the world from that that looks more regulated than what it looks like right now.
We share in that vision for sure, because that to me is the biggest opportunity that's in front of us right now with this collective shift in our collective consciousness, right? Is that we can move from a world that is just fighting to survive, which makes no sense in modern day terms
Yeah.
with all the resources we have. It like intellectually, it makes no sense into a world where we all get to thrive, including our planet, our economies, right? Our families, our health. Like, when we talk about this in terms of like the legacy play, like those are the things that are going to matter most when you look back from the
Yeah.
rocking chair and ask yourself if you made this round count, right? It's like
Right. Right.
not how productive you were and how much you burned out along the way. But
Mhm.
again, that's just it's a matter of perspective. And if we're stuck in fight or flight, and we're thus in a sympathetic overdrive, then our perspective is too limited to know that that's actually what matters the most, which is the power of going nervous system deep in your conscious leadership development practices. Is that it opens up an entirely, I call it the portal of possibility, but through that portal is like a completely new reality that we all get to experience that is way more profound and meaningful. And that's going to be the point when you're in the
Mm.
rocking chair, don't you think?
Mm.
I'm
I have a short climbing story actually that illustrates this. This is a few years ago. I was in Greece and I was trying this really hard, really overhanging climb. So when we talk about sport climbing, it's called sport climbing. We're trying something that seems impossible to us, and we do it, repeat it over and over until one day we can climb the whole thing without putting our weight on the rope. Basically, we call that free climbing, right? That you're climbing, but the rope is just there to just in case, but you're not using it for going up. And so I had picked out this climb, and it was impossible. Like it felt completely impossible, the stretch goal sort of idea, right?
Mhm,
And I'm
mhm,
there for weeks, and I'm scared, like I'm taking big falls, and I'm really in this nervous system place that's not flow, you know?
mhm,
And
mhm,
after a while, it was funny because in climbing, like the training is really, finger strength is important, training is important. Um, so I was really focused on this, and I was doing everything right. And it happened to be Christmas, so I went to see my family for a week, and focused on completely different stuff. I came back, and I hadn't been training for this whole week. I took a rest, and I was like, I don't even care anymore. And I tied into my rope and did the climb, and it was easy. I was like, that's impossible. How can this be easy? I was up there on the top going, did I just do this? Right? And then I realized it's like, oh, it's flow state and rest. That's what
mhm,
happens. It's like the thing that was going to take me my whole life
mhm.
all of a sudden was done. And I was like, oh, okay, I was wrong.
It's so funny though, like is that we actually sometimes we accidentally have to stumble upon that portal of possibility. This reminds me of like, back in the day, I'd always be so pissed off if I got sick, because it would mean I
Mm,
would possibly be sidelined from my training. And that would, when I was like, it's not safe. I got to keep achieving so I can be in the lineup and not fall behind. But didn't you know every single time I was forced to the sidelines because I was sick, I took, days or a week off my training. I always played my best hockey after that. Like it The proof and evidence does not lie. It's undeniable. And that's why we're trying to make this case, not for you just to listen to these concepts and get inspiration from them. Sure, that motivation is going to get you going out these gates, but it's the
Mm,
consistency of the practices that keep you growing, and especially this whole practice of periodization and really starting to just, yeah, see your
mm,
life and your time and energy management through, that perspective. Because all of that is all about, it's all about resources, which is how we train the capacity to show up in our flow. So,
mm,
last question I have for you, Marta, before I let you go. Have you ever done that exercise that I just described? That all the way up into the right aspirationally to the final seconds on the shot clock in terms of
mm,
how you're going to know you made it count? Like, what do you want your
mm,
legacy to be in terms of
mm.
your life's work?
Yes, I have. I love that exercise.
Me
I
too.
love I love that exercise. It every time I do it, I learn something more, you know?
Totally.
Um, it grows. It's not something that you do
It's
once
not
and you know.
static. No, because we're constantly
Um,
evolving and getting higher and higher in our consciousness, right? Which is where we
mm,
start to see other things as possibilities for our
mhm,
legacy.
mhm. For me, the actual feeling is when I meet myself there, I am welcoming of everything and anything. This is what this is who I'm becoming in this life, is someone
hmm
who can meet anything that gets shown with love, compassion, and gratitude. Um, and I think there's many paths up that
hmm
mountain. I'm open to feedback, um,
hmm
and following where the universe takes me. But I know where I'm going.
I think that that's so beautiful and so profound, right? Because I think that is the goal, really, if there is a goal. I think, it's hard to say there's a goal because there's no endpoint to consciousness training, right? Like
Yeah.
theoretically, it's something we can keep expanding as human beings in our lifetime. But to get to the point where you actually can just invite it all. We had an expert on the show in the fall, Dr. Ron Stotts, and he was talking about how he's like in his late 70s, and he's talking about how he sees everything coming into his energy. And he's just like, ooh, he's like a kid in a candy shop. Ooh, why is this coming in today? And he's just like, because he has so much experience in terms of that
Mm,
trust that if it's coming into his energy, it's part of his purpose to experience
mhm,
it, right? And so,
mhm.
therefore, everything is happening for him and his evolution of consciousness.
Right.
So, wow, I love the idea of that being you in the legacy chair. And I can totally feel that you are in alignment with that. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your brilliance with my crowd. This is everything that I am trying to really spread the ripple effect on right now because, yeah, you and I, we're in the trenches. Like the upregulation is real. And so this is exactly what we need to be discussing on, these episodes is some really practical advice in terms of how leaders can
Mm,
actually show up to that consciousness training right about now.
mm.
Any final
Yeah.
thoughts you'd like to leave with them before we go, Marta?
Yeah, actually, it's funny I want to say this now, but I want to acknowledge all of you that have been on the performance wagon. I want to acknowledge you because it's not wrong. We've been talking about all the things that, need to happen to be peak performance, but um I I I don't want to make the striving, the ambition wrong. It's not. It's just that our culture has been looking at it in a shallow way and hasn't been teaching us the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
So, because it's easy to, in this moment, for some high achievers, it might be like, oh my God, I've been doing it all wrong. No, you haven't. You've
Mm-mm.
been doing it right. There is
Mm-hmm.
more information for you
Mm-hmm.
that you get to bring into your set of practices. And just like my client welcomed her case builder, welcome your high achiever and talk to her or him and see what the needs are. And then you can become the leader that gets these needs met in a way that works for your body and for the planet.
I love that. Yeah, it really is a call. It's an invitation to co-create,
Mm.
right? And that's why you like to use the word play. I like to use the word play too. That's, I think, what we share, from being in these kind of athletic environments, because we had to learn to see it all as play so we could sustain being in a creative space and place, right? But that's everything that consciousness training is. It really is. If, whether I'm doing it like this or doing it like this, it's like it should be a creative exercise is the point, because that's what we're
Mm.
talking about in the expansion of resources and thus capacity. We're talking about creating more resources. Yeah, so I love that as a final note to end on for anyone looking for Marta, because I know you will be wanting to connect with her on the sidelines to get into some of her locker rooms. You can find her on LinkedIn. She also has this assessment tool, the capacitygap.io, and her website is mastersofbadassery.com. I just love the name of your business. We had to say it twice. We're going to make sure we have all that in the show notes so you'll have an easy time finding her. Thank you so much again for coming on the show today. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. The Conscious Leadership Revolution certainly has begun. We are so deeply grateful and honored that you're coming here to really gain inspiration in terms of how you can get out and start to play with some of these practices in your leadership lane. So thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your way out the locker room door today. And for all other curiosity in and around some of the ways we're playing and co-creating with leaders right now in this conscious leadership space, you can find all that information over at the website, elitehighperformance.com. That's it for this week. We'll see you all next week.